Welcome back. Well, when it comes to having a baby, it seems there is no shortage of advice for new mothers. But unfortunately, some are all too ready to criticise the things mums are supposedly doing wrong. From birth plans to breastfeeding, even decisions on when to return to work. It seems judging mums is, well, it's almost a sport. So for today's agenda, we are asking, are mums too competitive? And I'm joined by Dr. Gino Pecoraro and mother and writer Jane de Graaf from 9 Honey. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Jane, I'll start with you because I was reading that you were in a mothers group and you actually decided that the company was so toxic that you chose not to return.
Yeah, I was going for a little while and at first it was kind of helpful, but what happened was this situation developed where instead of the mums trying to outdo each other with who was the best mum, there was this real attitude of, oh, I've got it worse than you. And people were one-upping each other on that, like my baby's got worse reflux, my baby's not sleeping, you know, my baby's teething early, all these things. And we used to sit in this circle at mothers group and go around and discuss how rubbish our weeks had been. And my baby, actually, my first baby, happily, wasn't a terribly difficult baby. And I used to sit there and think to myself, I've got to make something up. I've got to say that something's gone wrong. Otherwise, they will all hate me. So I would sit there and think to myself, oh, he woke up a couple of times last night. I might have to say, oh, he's not sleeping terribly well. And I would go home and talk to my husband about it and say, I find it quite distressing that I have to invent things when I could be enjoying these first weeks of my baby's life. And he said to me, why are you still going? So I just quietly ghosted out of it all and just stopped.
And do you think that's a common occurrence being played out in mothers groups around the country?
Maybe not with the anxiety, but I know I've spoken to other friends who had similar things where mothers were trying to one-up each other on milestones and how good their baby was and all these kinds of things. So it plays out in different ways, but they were feeling the same kind of anxiety and having to invent things or try and one-up each other, and I don't think it's helpful.
Gino, as an obstetrician, obviously you have a lot of contact with both pregnant women and then women with new babies. Have you noticed in your career that things have really sort of amped up in terms of judging and comparing and Jane's sort of experience?
Yeah, that's absolutely not a unique experience. I don't know whether it's never happened before or whether we're just a whole heap more aware of it now. Women are competitive by nature, I think, and right from the start, if you've had no troubles getting pregnant and the lady next door or a friend of yours has had troubles, they do compare. But while it can sometimes be useful and build people up to talk about what's happening in their lives, what I'm starting to see, or have seen actually, is where it can be destructive and that some people are making themselves feel better by making somebody else feel worse. It's so prevalent that, in fact, we talk about it with our women when they first come. We say, look, you know, be careful where you get information about anything to do with having babies. You know, don't read Dr. Google. You know, be careful where you get your information. Make sure it's actual, real information. Make sure that anything that you read is supposed to decrease anxiety, to help you deal with things, to build you up. And I actually mentioned the mothers groups right at the start, saying, now, once you've had a baby, the temptation will be to go and join one of these mothers groups. If you find that they build you up and make you feel better about yourself, fantastic. Continue going, bring your baby there. But if you go there and they're all primed and primed and they're saying, I'm very happy, my life's fantastic, I've never had better sex with my husband, my baby's the perfect baby. One, they're
you
not...
smell a rat.
Yeah, they're not telling the truth. They're going straight from there to the day ward of the local psychiatric hospital to deal with the struggles that are happening. And two, you don't need that. You just need to be honest to say, look, you know, we've got good days and we've got bad days. And what we need to do is to help each other through this, rather than me try to one-upmanship you, or one woman upship you.
Yeah, very well said. I'm glad you said it. Jane, how much has this got to do with social media, do you think, and people posting and blogging and putting up these perfect, shiny images of how they've just got it all sorted and their baby's just perfect?
I think, yeah, it's a really curated look at the way motherhood is, and what I found was that sort of stuff gives you anxiety because you think there's this perfect ideal to live up to. No one puts up the pictures of 2 a.m. crying baby, temperatures, all those kinds of things, so you don't get a sense of what the reality is, and then you feel like a failure as a mother. What I found was, once I discovered that my mother's group wasn't necessarily for me and wasn't being helpful, was I surrounded myself with other supportive women who celebrated the wins with you, but also told you were still doing okay when things weren't going well. I have one mummy best buddy who we do this thing called Rubbish Mum. And if I've had a really bad day, I can ring her and say, I was a terrible mother today, I'm not winning. And she would be like, are the kids still alive? Have they hurt themselves? You're winning. They're loved, they're happy, they're fed, they're safe. You win, well done, good mum. mum.
Yeah.
And I'm okay, not rubbish mum, not rubbish mum.
Oh, you'd
and you
never
need
be
to
a rubbish mum, I'm sure.
And you need to find those people and surround yourself with those people and celebrate the wins and also support each other when you're down, not try and outdo each other when those things happen.
That is exactly right, because the reality is, Gino, as it is, you feel vulnerable. As your world, as wonderful as it is, it's also turned upside down when you bring a baby into the world. And I guess that there is a real risk that it can push potentially towards postnatal depression. A lot of new mums are experiencing that, and I wonder if that competitive nature just exacerbates it.
It certainly does. It's one of the things that I think contributes to what is the tragedy of postnatal depression in Australia in 2018. It's a very real thing. In fact, self-harm is now one of the leading causes of maternal death in the first world. And so it's while we're being chatty about it, it's a topic that women need to know about and their families need to know about. The unrealistic expectations that women have, the pressures that they put on themselves, the pressures that families and society puts on them certainly makes that worse. One of the things we talk about is relinquishing control when you're a mother. There are some things that you simply can't control. You can't control how your body will react. You certainly can't control how your little bundle of happiness is going to react, can I tell you? And when they want to be fed, they want to be fed. If they want to be changed, they want to be changed. It doesn't matter if it isn't convenient. So that relinquishing of control seems to go against everything that the modern woman is told. She's told you need to be in charge of your career, of your life, of your relationship. And sometimes you just need to be. It absolutely still takes a village to raise a child, but you need the right villagers around you. And they're people who help you and support you. Don't touch you and say you should be doing this. Talk about experiences. I think once you have a baby of your own, it makes you appreciate your mother and all the other families and women around you. It really is part of life. You know, you grow up, you fall in love, you have babies. It's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be a take-no-prisoners contact sport.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point about being discerning about the village you choose. I know my darkest hour came with breastfeeding. I really struggled with breastfeeding, and I had a clinic sister who basically just kept telling me to persevere in a very sort of frightening manner. And I sort of decided to just put that to one side and seek out someone who's more supportive in helping me make the transformation to bottle feeding. Jane, have you got any other advice for women who might be feeling this right now as we speak?
Support one another. Listen to your friends for when they're really crying out for help and talk to them about it, and don't put your own judgments and your own expectations on them. The most helpful thing that happened to me was when I realised that everybody's experience is different, and just because breastfeeding works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And just because your birth went smoothly and I had a caesarean doesn't mean it's going to be the same for everyone. Listen to what the mother that you're with is going through and support them with that and say, you know what, it's right for you and it worked for you. And I had a friend who went through a very similar thing. She was struggling with breastfeeding and she ended up with all kinds of anxiety because she wasn't bonding with the baby because it was so stressful. And when she finally decided to go to formula feeding and she found one person to support her with that, her relationship with her baby blossomed when it hadn't been blossoming before. And it was because of all these expectations around her to persevere and stick with what they thought was right. And I remember sitting with her and going, oh, you're so happy now. And that's when it comes, is when people support one another. When women say, you know what, doesn't matter what you thought was going to happen, this is the reality and it's good.
Yeah. You make perfect sense. I often think also a mother's instinct. Never lose sight of what your instinct is telling you about your baby, because you know your baby better than anyone. It is such a good topic of conversation to be had, and I really appreciate the input from both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There you go. To all you new mums out there, just enjoy your babies. It's okay.